Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Kallie. I am Kallie St. Clair, otherwise known as Consciously Kallie on social media. And I am here today with Cailee Anello for our fourth conversation here on my podcast. And she is the Ripened Heart on all social media platforms, as well as her website. So definitely go and check her out after this. But if you have not already listened to our other conversations, I highly recommend going and checking those out. Our conversations are always really deep and always really expansive. I know I even learn something new every time we have a conversation. So this conversation is one that I have been really, really excited for. And this is also Kaylee's area of specialty, which is human design. So I'm going to have her explain that here in a little bit. But first, I wanted to share with you guys that Cailee is gifting us a percentage off coupon for anybody who is listening to this podcast. So if you are listening in and you listen to this and you find that you want to dive deeper into yourself and your own human design, you can use the coupon code Kallie15 at her checkout on her website, and you will get that 15% off of any reading. So that is a really wonderful gift. So thank you, Cailee, for sharing that with us.
Sure. Yeah. I just think that, I just want to bring some lightness and levity to the end of this tumultuous year. And I just think that human design is the perfect way to do that because I know the first time that I saw my human design chart, also called a body graph, that I just felt so much hope. And it really awakened within me a power that I didn't even know I had lost. It showed me where I had potential that I wasn't really reaching. And it just showed me that there are so many possibilities for greatness within all of us. And all of us came here with a very specific purpose. And, no life is more important than any other. We all have our role to play. And so that's how I like to see human design. It shows us what our role is in this incarnation. And so you can think of human design as, another kind of typology system. Psychology has like the Enneagram and the Myers Briggs test, which were my first loves. I majored in psychology, so I was very into that. And then I got into astrology, which is actually within human design. So what I like about human design over other systems is I just feel like it integrates so much wisdom within one chart because it really takes time-honored traditions that our ancestors used and combines all of them into one chart. So it takes Western astrology, it takes the Kabbalah, or the tree of life as it's known, it takes the Hindu chakra system, it takes the Chinese I Ching, and even some quantum physics are in it. So when you look up your chart, you'll kind of get a sense for what I mean, because one of the first things that people will recognize when they look at their body graph is they'll be like, oh, I know those centers. It's kind of like the chakras, because there's 9 of them in human design instead of 7, but it looks very familiar. So that's a lot of times people's entryway into human design is through that and through understanding the centers because they are very similar. And so, before I wrap on about human design, if you want to look up your chart, there's a couple of different websites that I really like. So I like mybodygraph.com. I really like, there's a human design app that's just called the Human Design app you can get for your phone. And it will even tell you some of the transits, and you can kind of click on the centers and they'll give you a short synopsis of everything. So that's why I really like that app, is because I feel like it lays it out for you in a way that maybe my body graph doesn't unless you pay for it. And so those are the 2 I recommend. There's also Jovian Archive. And so basically, a lot of people ask me, okay, I've looked at my body graph. Now, where the hell do I start? There's so much to it because I feel like some people, they'll get really excited. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I want to know my human design. Like, that sounds so interesting. And then they look up their chart and they immediately shut the laptop. They're like, that is way too much information, too confusing. And it's funny because I've had people who come to me for a reading where they'll tell me, I found out about this a year ago, but it literally took me a year to come back around to it because there's so much information to integrate. I don't know how you felt, Callie, when you looked at yours for the first time, but it can be a
Yeah, so just as a little like background of how I got started or interested in human design was actually that I was in Marfa, Texas at, it was called Yeah Field Trip, and I met somebody there who was a reflector. And so actually the one of the only other reflectors that I've met, which she'll go into here in a little bit into more depth about what that means. But she told me, you need to look up human design. And so I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what it was, but I had it saved in my phone to search for like 6 months. Like it sat
yeah.
there for about 6 months where I was like, okay, now I'm ready. And then as soon as I looked it up, I was, as you said, like, I was like, whoa, there's so much information. But the great thing about it is that there are so many pages and that there is so much knowledge out there that you can really begin to dissect it. And for me, when I first ever saw anything about my chart and I listened to, I think, like a podcast about it, just like this, and I cried tears of joy because I felt so seen. I felt so validated and just overall was in so much alignment with who I was that, like, as you said, it gave me hope and it gave me like this newfound sense of self that
Mhm.
I then became extremely interested in it. And of course, got connected with you, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, and that was my experience similarly too, because I feel like we all carry this core wound that somehow who we are isn't enough, or who we are isn't like the rest of society in some way. We fall into the comparison trap of I should be this way, or I should do things that way like that person. And I just think human design is so validating in that way, that there's truly a reason why we gravitate towards doing things in a certain way, why we gravitate towards certain areas of interest over others, why certain people feel like, you either click with them or you don't. That's energetics happening, it's a real palpable thing that we can feel. When we meet somebody, we either like their energy or we don't. It's just an unspoken language that we can feel internally. And so we've always felt all these energies around us, whether we've been aware of it or not. The problem is that we've been trained to be so logical and left brain that we override our body's intuitive wisdom, and we override the energy that we're sensing around us with logic and with I should, I have to, and we second guess ourselves all the time. And so, even after years of doing this, I'll still come back to my own chart when I need a gentle reminder of actually, this is how I'm supposed to be. I can have confidence in who I am and in my path and in my journey. And it just gives you that reassurance and that validation and kind of that permission slip to be exactly who you are. And that's what I really like about the system.
It's crazy. My eyes are actually feeling like they might start watering. Like, that's how much I love this conversation.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
Because yeah, I feel that same way about it. And I love that you bring this to the table in such a tangible way, which is one of the things that really led me to you and to getting the readings that I did with you that started our connection, because it's really, easy to know about all of these concepts, but it's a lot harder to sometimes like put them into, tangible, like, how can I actually use this to, better my life, to better my relationships, to better my relationship with work, with myself, with the people around me. And that's really the freedom that I have found with human design, is the more that I tap into it, the more all of that stuff has a flow, and a lot less of that, that pushback or feeling out of alignment with where I'm going.
Totally, because I think of it this way. It's like when life starts to feel dark, I look at it like my soul kind of won the lottery to be here. There's so many souls out there that want to have this opportunity to incarnate into a physical form, to evolve, to have the human experience that is so, so beautiful and one of a kind. And so, that's why I wanted to know, like, what does my soul want me to do in this life? Because life is such a sacred thing. And I don't want to waste my time doing something that's out of alignment, or doing something that I didn't come here to do because I've been kind of programmed to believe that this is the way that life should look, because
Mhm.
there is no one size fits all. We are truly all different, which is why they call it the science of differentiation. It's like, how do you decondition all the programs to get to the core of who you are, not who society told you to be, not who your parents told you to be, or not maybe even who you pressured yourself to be based on comparing your journey to others, and how you've seen other people get success and how you've seen other people get acceptance. Because at the end of the day, we all just want to be loved and accepted. And so that's why we kind of morph ourselves into people that we're not, because for many of us, it's just a way to go along, to get along in our society. And so, when I tell people that they may have layers of conditioning, when I give them readings, it's never with any shame or anything like that I say that, because we all have that. And it was necessary for us to have that at a certain point to minimize any pain or discomfort when we were kids or when we were vulnerable. And so it's just an adaptation. And it's actually such a beautiful process of getting through all of those layers of adaptation to find out the real, like, nuggets of who we are and our true gifts and talents. And a lot of times you'll find that what you gravitated towards when you were a child, when you were less conditioned by society, is what you tend to come back to. And what you wanted secretly to do all along is actually what you came here to do. But society will tell us it's a lofty goal or that it's impossible. So I just like to remind people that actually it's possible, because the universe is conspiring in your favor to bring you that, but you're blocking it because you don't believe you're worthy, or you don't believe it's possible.
Yes, that is exactly like the way that I have seen human design play out in my life as well. Was that when we are younger, we're growing up in this conditioning of, like, I feel like I need to be somebody. I feel like I need to dress a certain way. I need to act a
Yeah.
certain way. And even for me, had this like perception of, who am I to do anything? Like, who am I? Who
Mhm.
am I to, you know, follow my dreams? Who am I to do those things that brought me joy as a child? Because we are so, indoctrinated into this system that values our worth based off of what it is that we are doing, rather than human design, which I think validates that you don't have to do anything to be a marvelous creature that is here for us, a powerful purpose. It's all about your being. It's
Yeah.
all about, you came here with all of the tools and with all of the knowledge and, you know, beauty that we get to embrace instead of question. And yeah, just overall, like, has completely shifted from somebody who, as you said, which some people may feel, don't know their purpose here.
Mhm.
Or, for me personally, I didn't know what the whole point of life was. I was like, I literally, I mean, growing up, I was like, what's the purpose in all of this? Like, all it seems is
That's
like
so true.
we go to school and we suffer. Like, there's just, or we, as soon as we graduate, then we just pay bills and die. It's
Yeah.
like, this cycle of a lot of us get stuck in. And when we take that step back and really look at our being, we see all of our potential and all of this divine creation that we get to make with our soul's purpose.
Yeah, I love how you put that. It really brings the magic back to life and makes it this meaningful, dynamic existence. Whereas before, it can feel very, very one dimensional, very pointless, very like, why even get up in the morning sometimes, especially with all the dark, heavy energy that we're under this year astrologically. There can be a great, potential for depression and like, oh, we're constantly being bombarded with the message that we're screwed, as a planet. And it's like, actually, we're going through a death and rebirth cycle. That's really how I see it. And that the human design echoes that. It's like some things need to die to then be reborn. It's like that archetype of the phoenix rising from the ashes to be better than it was before. And it can be a painful process to decondition all of these things. But at the other side of it, you'll feel so much lighter and so much freer, and you'll have so much more flow in your life versus like constantly feeling like you're battling against yourself or battling against life, or pushing against the current instead of flowing with the current, is kind of how I like to imagine it. And so that's kind of a good segue into the types, because that's kind of akin to like your sun sign in astrology, or like what your Enneagram number is. It's like the basis of the system. And so there are 5 types in human design. The 2 most common types that you'll see are generators and manifesting generators. And all that means is that you have the sacral center defined. And so if you look at a body graph, when I said, the chakra system or their centers, it'll be the red square that's one up from the bottom of your chart. If that's red, that means that you're either a manifesting generator or a generator. And all the other types, all the three other types, they don't have that colored in. So if you have that colored in, that means that you're what's called an energy type. And so that's why I like to see the types as like, what's your relationship to life force energy, and how do you best utilize life force energy to get the best outcome and the most efficiency in your life. And so for the 2 energy types, they actually get energy back from doing things that light them up and doing things that are in their purpose and in alignment with who they are. And the things that aren't in alignment will actually, they'll drain energy from their being, and they'll kind of feel depleted after doing that, whether that's like being around a person that doesn't light them up, a job that doesn't light them up, an energy dynamic, or like a place that they live that doesn't light them up. It's basically just the body using life force energy as a feedback mechanism to say, hey, you're on the right track, or hey, you made a wrong turn somewhere. We need to turn this car around and go back in the right direction, because it's like the universe wants to reward you for being in alignment with your purpose, because again, you came here with a mission, right? So you don't want to waste, you don't want to waste time, and you don't want to waste energy being who you aren't. And that's why it feels good to be in alignment. So it's kind of like a feedback. And then there's projectors and reflectors and manifestors. I knew I was forgetting one. So those are what we call non-energy types. And so it doesn't mean that you don't have energy. It just means that you don't get energy back from doing the things you love. However, I still fully believe that when you are in flow and doing things that you're meant to do, you still waste a lot less energy, because you're still going to get that depletion from the things that are out of alignment. So it just means that you came here with kind of a set energy bank that you have to calibrate at the start of each day. Just take a minute to like tune into, where is my energy level at today, and then plan it out accordingly. And the way that you can kind of hack this is that, because you have the sacral center open, if you're around a generator or manifesting generator, they will actually give you energy and kind of propel you through. So that's kind of cool. And like I said, 74% of the population has that sacral defined. So most people in your life are going to give you that energy back if you're a non-energy type. And I never see any one type as better or worse than the other. It's just how you use your energy best. So that's kind of how I like to see that.
That's funny that you said that, because one of the things that started clicking when I first dove into human design was I don't have that energy center defined, but my sister does. And every
Mm.
time she would FaceTime me, I would all of a sudden get this like burst of energy to do my laundry or to like to do something. And I'm like, your presence alone is giving me this energy. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so now that I've kind of explained energy versus non-energy types, I'll get into more specifics about each type because there's more to it than that, because it's also describing literally your auric field. And so when you were talking earlier, Callie, about how, we didn't just come here to be productive and to be a workhorse and to, prove our worthiness. Human design really speaks to that because just your auric configuration is sending energy out into the collective and having an impact. So kind of like you said, all you have to do is call up your sister and you get that jolt of energy. She didn't do anything. She didn't tell you to do your laundry. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just an impact of the energy, and we're always feeling that. And that's why we feel differently around different people and differently in different environments. But I don't think we understand the impact of our auric field on the people around us, and that just by being fully present and embodied and in alignment, we have such a positive impact on the world because they can feel that light, that inspiration, that joy. It just oozes out and it influences everybody that you interact with. And so it's really huge. It's kind of like, when you go to the store and you get like a cashier that maybe they're waiting for their lunch break and they're kind of down and like, they're checking you out. It's a totally different experience versus if they're like, how's your day going? Oh, I see you got that. Like, that's such a cute top. Like, you know what I mean? Their energy has such a direct influence on your experience at the store that day and can have a ripple effect into the rest of your day. Like if you run into a rude person on the road versus somebody who's staying in their lane, you know what I mean? It has a very palpable effect, and we just don't really have common vernacular for these experiences or a way to describe them. And all it is energy. And so with that, considering that we all have a different aura configuration, then we can go more specifically into the 5 types if that's kind of the direction you want me to go in.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that just came up though as you were talking, thinking about it from a tangible perspective too, is that we know that even from a scientific psychological perspective, that the majority of speech is not about what you say, but how you say it, because body language speaks more about how it is that we're feeling, what we're saying, than any words that we speak. And so
Mhm.
you can tell just with like you said, with the energy of a person, whether they are in their body language showing you that they are vibrant and
Yeah.
happy, or whether they are low, insecure, grieving, any of those other emotions. You can really sense that from people just walking into a party. You can sense who might feel good and who's in alignment, and then who maybe doesn't feel as good or is having an off day or whatever it may be. So that's just from like that was what connected for me too, is that we knew that coming into like any of this conversation, is that like body language speaks so much. And so it's the same thing, but energy, of course, our energy fields are so much bigger than us. They say that
Yeah.
it goes out 6 feet, from your body. And so when you go into a room, that's why you can feel somebody's presence, feel somebody's energy when they walk into a room. So yeah, I'm really, that like is perfectly put. And yes, please go into the specific types now so that everybody can hear a little bit more about their specific aura type.
Yeah, absolutely. So, starting more specifically with the generator type, that is by far the more common than the manifesting generator that I said. And so, really, the generator incarnated here to do what lights them up. They are very work oriented, but the thing is that work can take so many forms. It doesn't have to be like the traditional 9 to 5 or being an entrepreneur or anything like that. It's really that whatever role you came here to play. Luckily, the universe gave you this sacral center that gives you this kind of energizer bunny, go, go, go energy. so that you can sustain what you're doing and see it through. And you can help out the other non-energy types to see what they want to start through to completion as well. So you're kind of playing a role in the other types' lives as well. And so again, like I said, it's really based on that sacral response. Your sacral response, also I like to call it the gut response. It's either going to give you an expansive yes, I love that thing, or it's going to give you a contractive no, that isn't really for me. And going back to body language, I am a generator type. So speaking from experience, it really has a different, like, my body feels differently when I'm doing things that light me up, that I love, that resonate so deeply with who I am. It feels expansive. I feel more relaxed, and versus when I'm having to force something or do something out of obligation. Um, I feel contracted. You can notice your shoulders round and you're kind of like wilted, like a wilted flower, like, oh, you
Yes.
know, because you're being kind of drained of that life force energy. And, I want to say that there's always going to be things that you have to do in this life that you don't want to do, but it's all about balancing the scales with doing more of what lights you up and maybe trying to reconfigure and take inventory of what you do on the daily that's depleting your energy. Because so many clients that I see, they come to me with fatigue, whether they're an energy type or a non-energy type. And it's because 9 times out of 10, they're saying yes when they should be saying no. They're doing things because they should. They're not prioritizing themselves, and it's usually a pretty easy fix, because as soon as they give themselves permission to say yes to more things that feel good and say no to the things that don't more often, that totally shifts the dynamic. And then they have this really expansive, amazing life force energy that truly is contagious. And so, you really benefit everybody around you by saying yes to the things that light you up. And so that brings me to strategy and authority. That's the other part that you're really going to want to master first before moving on to other things in human design, because it tells you about your decision making process and how you navigate life on a day to day basis. And so that's what you were saying, like, human design gives you a very practical way of utilizing it that you can use in your everyday life. It's not just an abstract concept. It's something that I use every moment of every day. And so, because if you think about it, life really is just a series of small and big decisions that you have to make from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. And so, as a generator, your strategy is to wait to respond. And your authority, it will tell you in your body graph, because it can be a little bit different based on if you have certain centers defined or not. And so that's something that people will have to look up in their individual charts. But basically, the way to respond is that generators and manifesting generators are really supposed to let life come to them, to let the universe send you people and signs and synchronicities and opportunities, and to not constantly try to initiate things in your life. Because a lot of times when generators and manifesting generators, and really anybody but manifestors, which I'll get to, when they try to initiate and go after life and try to constantly start things, they're met with a lot of resistance. And then they get frustrated, and then they wonder why they're frustrated. So they push even harder. And that's kind of what leads them to burnout, because they're not letting life come to them, and they're not letting life be a flow. And so I know, like, when a lot of people hear this at first, they're really confused because we grow up to say, go out, get the job, make something of yourself, make it happen, just do it, And so really, the majority of us aren't really supposed to operate in that way. And so we're supposed to wait for that opportunity to come to us and to flow to us. And then our gut will tell us if it's a good opportunity or not, because like I said, it'll either feel like a yes, like an expansive yes, or it'll feel like a contractive no, like that isn't for me. And we're supposed to trust that, because it's when we keep saying yes to things that feel contractive that our life kind of becomes a mess. And so even engaging with that sacral response on a daily basis in a little way is such a good way to connect with it, because a lot of us are so out of tune with what our intuition feels like in our body that it's so easy for our mind to kick in and just override all of that intuition. And so it's really important to spend more time in doing right brain activities, as I call it. So things that get you out of your head and into your body. So whether that be meditation, where you focus on the sacral, whether that be even looking in hindsight at things that you have a really strong preference for, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Is there something that somebody mentions and you just automatically, your whole body lights up? That's a yes. Is there something, where people mention that you're like, oh my God, I hate that? That's a no. It's pretty simple. And so we tend to overcomplicate it. But getting in tune with that intuition is so important. And so that's all about what your decision making strategy is, because it's trying to tell you what path to take so that you're in alignment with your purpose. And that's really all it boils down to. And so stop me if at any time I'm just going to wrap on the
No,
types, but
yeah, keep on going.
great. Okay, so manifesting generators are generators at their core. So all of what I just said applies to them, except that they kind of win the human design game, as they call it, because they have that defined sacral, but then they have what we call a motor center connected to their throat. And so all a motor center is there's a handful of them. There's also a potential for them to get energy from that. And because it's linked to their throat center, they are able to initiate and manifest things into reality like a manifester would after they get that sacral yes. But the problem with manifesting generators is that because they have so much energy, they are constantly wearing many different hats and multitasking, and they may move too quickly and they end up making mistakes, or they say yes too quickly to things and then they regret it later. So that's something really important to know. If you're a manifesting generator, it's natural for you to want to multitask and do many different things and pivot. And manifesting generator friends that I have in my life, they're so good at so many things and they can do all of those things simultaneously. They're like an entrepreneur, they're a graphic designer, they're a nutrition coach, they're hiking mountains, they're like unstoppable. And when you're in their presence, you're like, how do you go and go and go and go? Even as a generator, it's palpably different. They just have so much life force energy when they're doing what's in alignment. It's crazy. And so the only thing is that they just need to let other people catch up to them sometimes, because they're so in the moment and they're so go, go, go and in their own head that sometimes they don't inform the people in their life of what they're doing. They'll just like run out and go to the store and their husband will be like, where'd you go? Just like, let me know what you're up to so that I feel like I'm on the same page. And so that's the thing, is that they have to inform the other people in their life of what they're doing if it has an impact on them, because they move so fast. And they really need to take a moment to really visualize what they want and the outcome that they want before committing their energy to something and before saying yes. Because like I said, they're going to want to be like, yes, 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 yes. And they regret it later. The situation comes, the night of the party comes and they're like, why did I say yes to that? I'm too busy. So they need to just slow their roll a little bit and, realize that as an energy being, whether you're a generator or a man gen, your life force energy is so sacred and important, and you don't want to waste it, because just because you have a lot of it doesn't mean that you can't spend it. It's like getting a credit card. and just like maxing it out every day because you have, it's like free money, at the moment. You're like, oh, I can just spend this and this and this. And then they waste it and then they become depleted. So that's what I'll say about them. And then we get to manifestors, which they have that half of the manifesting generator that's able to initiate. But the thing is that they're able to initiate without that sacral response. And so again, what their authority is depends on their chart. But most people, they will have emotional authority, about half the population. And so that's going to be another part of the equation, is that if you have the solar plexus center defined, and I know I haven't gone through all the centers, but you'll see it in your chart. It's the triangle that's on the right hand corner. It'll be brown. If that's filled in, then that means you're going to automatically have emotional authority. So that means that even if something feels like a yes in your body, you're going to want to wait at least 24 to 48 hours, because you'll be riding an emotional wave where it could really cloud your judgment and it could impact your decision-making process. And so it's so important to have even keel emotions before committing. So that's another factor to consider.
I think everyone like that has an emotional authority, I'm sure, can relate to that
Oh,
of
yeah.
like you commit to something or you feel like so good about something and then a little time goes by and you're like, why did I feel that way then? Because I feel differently now. So
Yeah, and
that
I
makes
will
sense.
say that even if you have that center open, if you're around somebody with it defined, or you've picked up a lot of emotional energy from the collective, that can absolutely impact your decision making, regardless of what authority you have, and maybe even more so, because whenever you have a center that's open, you're going to take in the energy from the outside world, and that's where the conditioning comes in. And so the thing about having open centers is that not only do you take that in, but you actually amplify the energy or make it stronger. So you may feel it even stronger than the person who sent that energy out. Because what I should explain before I continue on, because really all what I'm saying is with the energy types, it's always going to be based on your centers. So what centers do you have defined? Or if you don't have any defined at all, in your case, Callie, that means you're a reflector. So it's always, your type is always based on the centers anyway. So when you have centers white, they're going to receive information, receive energy. And when you have centers defined or colored in, doesn't matter what color it is, it's going to be sending energy out. So it's like a transmitter. And then the open centers are the receiver. And so when you're receiving the energy and amplifying it, like in the case of the solar plexus, emotions, it's all about emotions, that's going to cloud how you feel about something. So you always want to consider that. So really the first thing that you should know about your human design is your type, and then really look at what centers you have opened and what centers you have defined.
Mhm.
And
And
so
then
like,
one thing I was gonna ask just really quick too. So
yeah,
um, we talk like you're going through the types, which if anybody sees their chart, you will see that that's like the first thing that comes up. And then she's also talking about our strategy as well as our like which kind of goes along with the like you said the centers. And so
yeah.
with that, like do you kind of want to explain like what that means basically if you have that solar plexus defined and you know you have that emotional authority, like what that means for you?
Mhm. Yeah, so strategy and authority are always talking about how you best make decisions. And
Mm.
so that's what you need to know about it, is essentially your type is how you use energy in your day-to-day life in the most efficient way. And then strategy and authority is how you make decisions and how you get to the next level in your life. What's the next stepping stone? And so let's just use the example of emotional authority because it's very common. So that means you're going to have a defined solar plexus, and anybody can have emotional authority besides a reflector. And so essentially what that means is that you're going to have these emotional waves that you feel throughout your day. So essentially, there are certain things that can set off your emotional wave. It's going to be different for everybody. It could be somebody around you. It could be a stressful day. It could be a really happy day. You could be on the emotional high. But the point is that you're going to go through this wave where you feel really good and you feel really bad, and then you feel neutral about something. So, say somebody presents you with a job opportunity, you're going to have an initial emotional reaction to that, and you're going to have a intuitive reaction to that. But what I want to say about that is the emotion is always going to be stronger than the intuitive part, the intuitive faculty. So let's say you're a generator with a defined sacral, and you have this really expansive response of, yes, oh my God, that sounds like such a good opportunity. I love doing that type of thing. And then the emotion kicks in a second later and is like, but I don't know if I can do that. I don't really know if I can show up in that way. I'm too scared to do that. That's too out of my comfort zone. And then here you go on the emotional wave of, I can do it. I can't do it. I can do it. I can't do it. I can do it. And then maybe, you sleep on it and you wake up the next morning after feeling both sides of that equation. You've felt the high of it, you felt the low of it, and you're like, okay, I've felt both sides and now I'm more neutral about it. And then you can really make an informed decision because you felt that in your body. And so that's why, the famous words of somebody with emotional authority should be, let me sleep on it and I will get back to you later. Because your initial response may not be the appropriate one. You really have to ride out the emotional wave and see what's on the other side of that wave. But what I want to say about it is, even when you come to clarity about it, 24, 48 hours, you'll know, you'll know in your gut. That's when your gut will kick in and be like, I know this is the right thing to do, even if I'm scared, even if this is out of my comfort zone, or I know this isn't the right thing to do, even if it's practical and even if I feel like I should do it. You'll have clarity, but because you felt both sides of the coin with your emotions, you'll only ever be about 80% sure. So there's still going to be the little bit of that uncertainty still left. And that's just because your body has felt, both polar ends of the situation. And so that's something that's really important to know, is that even if you feel like you've come to kind of clarity or an emotional neutral, if you still feel that like nagging doubt, that's natural, and just push through because it's going to be there. You're never going to feel 100% sure of your decision if you have emotional authority. So I hope that gives a good example.
I love
Now,
that.
let's say, on another end, let's say that you are a generator, but you don't have the solar plexus defined, so you don't have emotional authority. Then you can trust your gut response in that moment. You can say yes in the moment and trust that it's going to be a good decision. You're not going to regret it later. But like I said, if you know that you're around somebody who's very emotional in that moment and is kind of like pushing you to one side, um, take a moment to yourself, like take a walk around the block, take a moment to be in your own energy before saying yes, because you could be picking up on their emotions, which could cloud your judgment.
Mm, I love that. And I know, since you said around 74, a little over 70% of people are generators or
Mhm.
manifesting generators. This is, yeah, really important for anybody who's in that area to know about. So, and then you started talking about the manifestors, which
Yeah.
are about 8% of the population, right? So they're a little bit more rare.
Yeah. They're about 8 to 10%. And so they're really the only types that are supposed to initiate action. I kind of like to call them the domino flicker, because, they flick the domino and everything else kind of falls into place for them. Because, like I'd alluded to earlier, with the generators being there to kind of help out the non-energy types, manifestors are great starters, but sometimes they don't finish the job because they don't have that sustaining energy to pull from. They work in short bursts. So actually, I've seen a lot of manifestors who make really good entrepreneurs and good like practitioners, because that's how they work. Is they'll record a podcast, then they'll take a break. They'll do a client session, then they'll take a break. They'll take a phone call, then they'll take a break, because their energy really does work in short bursts. And they can be very impactful bursts, though. Like, speaking of auric field, you'll feel when a manifester walks into a room. I've seen it literally where a manifester will walk in and people will kind of like part the way because their energy, their aura is so big and penetrating and like it goes out so strongly that it's very polarizing, actually, because manifestors are here to make an impact. They're here to be polarizing. So you either love them or you hate them, or you love to hate them. Because, they just say it like it is. They're here to shift paradigms and to ruffle feathers. And they can be a little bit afraid of the impact that they can have, honestly, because a lot of times manifestors, when they're kids, they'll kind of be taught to downplay that and to, let other people kind of fill in that power dynamic, I guess you could say, because manifestors are initiators. It's like I was talking about with the manifesting generator. They just want to go do things and not tell anybody. They're really the lone wolves of human design. They love their projects. They love to go get lost in the woods. They love to go on drives. They love to go start things, and they love to have a big impact. And so they really don't like when people tell them what to do. And so that's why they don't inform, is because they feel like if they tell you they're going to do something, they think back to childhood where their mom would say, no, you can't do that. So they are really afraid of meeting that resistance of somebody telling them no. And so that's why they'll go off and do things without informing. And then people will be like, where are they? Why aren't they telling me where they are? Why aren't they telling me, like, including me in on this? And then that's when they actually meet that resistance, is when the people in their life feel like they're left in the dust. And so that's why the strategy of a manifestor is to inform. Because if you inform, it doesn't mean that the person has to agree with what you're doing. You're not asking permission. You're just politely telling people that are involved in your decision-making process, who are impacted by what you do, what you're doing, so that they're aware of it. It's like, I like to give this scenario where a manifestor decides, you know what, I'm quitting this job right now today. Instead of leaving the room and not telling anybody you're quitting, you submit your notice. And it doesn't mean that, they have to be happy that you're leaving or that they have to be on board with your decision, but you have to let them know so that they can prepare accordingly.
And that's one of the things that, right, that with manifestors too, is that it's knowing it's okay to be dynamic and change throughout your lifetime,
Yeah.
because as you said, manifestors are meant to initiate a lot of things, but aren't necessarily meant to finish things.
Yeah.
So I like, yeah,
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. They're here to make waves too. They really are. And we need them to know that they're supposed to initiate, because the rest of us can't. So they're really good at getting things going and, being kind of the overseer, like the kind of like I like to think of them like the CEOs, like, because the history of a lot of manifestors is that they were the royalty back in the day. They were the people who wrote the laws. They were, the kings, the queens. And so they're kind of used to overseeing and initiating, like, go do this, go do that. And so that's what they're really good at. And so they need to know when to delegate things. Because it really does benefit everybody. It's not like anybody is on this hierarchy above or below, like in the case of a king or a queen situation. It's just that, everybody has a different role, a different piece that they are of this puzzle. And so because they know that they work in short bursts, they're going to go make their impact and then rest and then delegate and do the things that they know they have the biggest impact to doing. And so, well, you might wonder, okay, well, how do I know that? How do I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And so that's where that internal feedback mechanism comes in, of the not self theme. And so for manifestors, when they're on the wrong path, they're going to feel really angry. that anger will kick in tenfold, and they won't be able to squash that anger, and it will come out in different ways. By the way, it's not just road rage, it's not classic anger. Anger can manifest as body tension, anger can manifest as self-criticism and self-judgment, it can manifest as headaches, it can manifest as digestive issues. It can be internalized or externalized. It can be used against somebody or used against yourself. And so always remember that about energy. And so when they're on the right path, they're going to feel peace, and they're going to feel like they're in alignment. They're going to be more relaxed in their body. They're going to be more relaxed in the knowingness that they're not for everybody, and that that's okay, because if you were for everybody, you would have no time for anybody. You only have so much time in the day. You can't be for everybody. You have to be for some people, not others. And so they relax into that knowingness that they can be impactful, and they don't worry so much about like what they have to do, or if it's um, outside of the norm, because sooner rather than later, that will be the norm later on. They're just kind of ahead of the curve sometimes.
I love that explanation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next energy type is projectors, correct?
Yes. Yes. And before I get to projectors, I just want to say, for the manifesting generator and the generator, the not self theme is frustration. And so, like, a manifestor will feel angry, they'll feel frustrated, and they'll feel extreme resistance. Where if they're on the right path, they're going to feel really satisfied. It's like when you finish a project, you're like, God, that feels so satisfying. I feel good. I really accomplished something that day. And so that's kind of their internal feedback mechanism that their body gives. And that's a very real thing.
Yeah, no, I love the not self-theme explanations, because it really is a cheat sheet almost to whether or not you are in alignment or you're not. Because if you
100%.
are feeling frustrated, then that means that you're on your wrong path. Like there's something either in your environment, in your life, your career, that needs to be changed. So it is, that internal, guidance system that then can lead us to feeling more of those like positive themes, like you said, satisfaction,
Yeah.
or yeah, surprise, or whatever the theme is for your type.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, that's where I think that negative emotions aren't negative at all, because it's just feedback.
Mhm.
What if we didn't ever have any bad feelings or negative feelings or discomfort? Then we could be going 100 miles an hour in the completely wrong direction and not know it. And then it'll hit us by surprise or something. And we'll be like, what? The body is always giving us signals very, very early on. It's the same thing with health. Like, first, you have little signs and symptoms that get bigger and bigger over time if they're ignored. It's the same thing with these not self themes. The frustration will grow, the anger will grow, if it's not addressed, and it'll come out in different ways. And so I really also think it impacts what you attract in your life too. Maybe you don't feel the anger, but maybe you attract really angry people because they're your mirror. Mirroring back that anger that you're not acknowledging inside, that maybe it comes out in your dreams. There's all these different ways that it can manifest, that it's on a subconscious level impacting you and you're just not aware of it. But once you start making friends with that, then it will just guide you and show you the way and be a teacher, and you'll be so grateful that you have it.
I like that. It's one of the biggest things that I've found with human design is it's
Mhm.
a deeper appreciation for yourself, a deeper appreciation for the messages that your body is guiding you on. And so I think, instead of, as you said, we think of these emotions as being negative emotions or positive emotions, that it all just is, and that it's leading us to where it is that we need to go. And so I think that's one of the most powerful things about tapping into human design.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's two more types. And so projectors, I love projectors. I work with projectors quite a lot because I feel like projectors really know how much they have to offer, but they will meet resistance pretty quickly if they're not operating in the right way, or the right way. There's no right or wrong way, but in a way that's easier for them and more in alignment. And so they'll often come for a reading. And so a projector essentially is really here to be our guides. And so the reason, again, that they are non-energy types is because they're really here to be strategic with their energy. They're really, really good at hacking a system and knowing the shortcut to take, knowing the more efficient way of doing something. So they're really good managers, like project managers. They make really, really good coaches, business coaches, anything that's system involved, like human design. There's so many amazing projectors that are in human design. The more that they niche down into a specific system or niche field of information, the more happiness and the more success that they'll experience in their life. Because for a projector, their not self is bitterness, or they'll feel success, because really a projector wants to be recognized for their unique gifts and talents, even more so than the other types, because they're meant to guide us. So basically, a projector has a different way of seeing life than the rest of us do. They have a more zoomed out perspective because they spend more time on the sidelines observing than the rest of us. It's kind of like they get that bird's eye perspective, and then they want to swoop down and tell us like a more efficient way of doing something, or where we may be going wrong, or what we could do better, or you should try this or that. They want to give us advice. And so often, because a reflector sees into people so much, they have a penetrating aura that can just see into people and see into life and systems. And they want to so badly be of help and be of service, but some people aren't ready for their advice. And so that's where they meet resistance. And that's why their strategy is to wait for the invitation, which really I like to see as just wait for somebody to recognize you. It can be as simple as, you lock eyes with somebody across the room. That's an invitation to go up to them and introduce yourself. Or if a book keeps synchronistically coming back, it's the universe sending you an invitation to read this because you might like it. It could be somebody inviting you on the podcast. It could be somebody booking a service with you. That's an invitation. All you're wanting from them is permission to give your much needed advice. Because when they give you permission and when they invite you to do that, they're going to be receptive to it and they're not going to shut down. Because you see so much of them, it can be intimidating. And like I said, they may not be in a place where they're going to be receptive to it. And so they may ignore it. And that's when that bitterness comes in. The bitterness levels rise because they're like, I see this. I see how you could be doing this better, and you're not listening to me. Why don't you listen to me? I see it so clearly. And I'm sure that they do. It's just that person is just not there yet. And so that's why, as soon as projectors understand that they're supposed to wait for that recognition, for that permission to share, for somebody to simply ask their opinion, then they can relax and know that when they're recognized in that way, that they will rest assured that that information will be well received and that the person will actually take their advice. um, there's a story of a projector kind of being in a corporate setting, and they're having a roundtable discussion, and they constantly are trying to speak up and initiate and try to, give their advice, and nobody integrates it, nobody accepts it. And then they learn about their human design, that they're a projector, and they relax into knowing and trusting that when the timing is right, somebody will ask for their opinion. When they relax and fully embody that, and they show up and their aura is confident and relaxed and not desperate to be heard, people can sense that, and then they're going to want to ask your opinion. There's something magnetic about that. I think that projectors really can be the most like, you want to know what they're going to do next. You're really absorbed into what they do because you know that they see things so clearly and so differently, and you want a little piece of what they see. And so as soon as they relax into that knowingness, then people start to ask them for their advice, to start asking them for their expertise, and it's heard. So that's where understanding energy dynamics is so important, because the big fear for people who have to wait and not initiate is that nothing ever is ever going to happen for them because they're not out there making it happen. But as soon as you show up and you, in the case of a projector, really refine your niche and put your energy into knowing it through and through and contributing something unique to it, and posting your work online, people can know what you're doing, and then they'll start inviting you to share or booking you or whatever the case may be. And so I think they find a lot of relaxation in that, and knowing that they're not really meant for this 9 to 5 life. Like the manifester, they don't work in bursts, but they have a set amount of life force energy. They're not that Energizer bunny. They're going to maybe need that midday nap, or they're going to maybe, need that bath after work. And again, they're here to be efficient. So they can get things done more efficiently than the rest of us. So they don't always need that 8 hours of work. They may get it done quicker than us. So that's what I have to say about projectors. And do you have anything to add, Callie, before I get to the best for last, reflectors?
No, but that does just remind me of, there's somebody that a leader in doTERRA that I follow who's a projector that is into human design. And that's one of the things that she has said is, since finding human design, she thought that she needed to do that 9 to 5, work hard as we're taught when we're young. And when you find out your energy type, you can really become efficient in what actually is going to work best for you. And so she dedicates 3 hours a day to her business, and she gets everything done during that time that she needs. And so I think that that is a huge tool to tap into, is like, my work day looks completely different knowing about, my energy type than it used to, because I thought that I needed to be a generator, thought I needed to be this manifesting generator where I constantly had this energy. So that's just like a tangible example that came to mind as you were talking about that with projectors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a misconception that people can have about generators too is that they'll sit down at their desk and they can like work a straight 8 hours. But for me, I mean, everybody is going to be different. I kind of jump from task to task. I like to do this and then I go do something else, and I go do something else. I don't like to be doing the same exact thing for the whole time. I like variety, and my sacral will kind of tell me what the priorities are, and the best way to do that and go about it. And I need to kind of put in things that light me up and be in an environment that I really like so that I can get it done. And so it matters for everybody. There is no set way or right way of doing that. Your body's going to give you feedback and what feels best.
I like that explanation. And you're right. Like, I mean, I don't think it doesn't matter what your type is. Nobody is meant to sit for 8 hours a day and just, I mean, look at our ancestors, in general, our bodies are not meant to just be these stagnant sitting beings. So by all means, we are all so dynamic. And that's what I just love about this, is that it shows how different each and every single one of us are. It's not about what category you're in, because every single generator is completely different from each other.
Truly.
And so this is just a tool to help you know how you work best, and that you can really understand yourself better.
Yeah, and really your type is just scratching the surface. It's just like the first entryway into human design, because every generator is going to look so different. Like you said, every projector, even every reflector, even though reflectors, they're all going to have no definition in their chart. You're going to have a different profile. You're going to have a different incarnation cross, different gates, which I'll explain. But what I love about human design is there's so many layers to it. And there's just so much to learn in your chart that it's a never ending discovery process. So for those who really love to go deep into themselves and how they operate, it's the perfect system, because there's really no end to it.
Yeah, exactly. Every post that you make, every time I dive into this, I learn something that just absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's a never ending process, which I have the gate of depth, which I do know that one. I don't know a lot about my chart, but
Oh,
you told me
yeah.
that during one of my readings, is that I have the gate of depth, which is probably why I'm so interested in how deep this goes and why I was so drawn to human design.
Absolutely.
So now I'm really excited to hear about reflectors, which is my energy type.
Yeah, so reflectors are a whopping 1% of the population. So congratulations, you won the lottery. And so reflectors really are, as the name sounds, they're like our mirror. They are our barometer for how we're doing on this planet, because they're kind of like the bull in the china shop. They can go in and they can know right away what's working and what's not working. They can tell if a person's healthy or unhealthy, if an environment is unhealthy or healthy. Same with systems, everything around them, they can feel it in their body. And I think that there's a misconception that because there's no definition, that all of the centers are white or open, that they're somehow more vulnerable or a weaker type or something like that. But they're actually the most resilient type in human design. Because you can kind of slough off all the energy when you know how to, and you can shake it off. And when you're by yourself, you can just be this like amazing channel of pure divine energy and love just flowing through your body because you have so much openness. And it's like when you're soul incarnated, you're like, what if I just came to learn and be wise about every single center in the human design system? Wouldn't that be fun? because because basically we call reflectors lunar beings because they are very impacted by the lunar cycle. So the lunar cycle is 28 days, and that's why their strategy is to wait a lunar cycle, because when the moon is transiting, all different parts of their chart or their design are going to be highlighted. So they're really impacted by astrological transits. They're going to feel them. And like I said, if you download the My Human Design app, it'll tell you what centers are being defined by this current transit. I know that for a couple of months now, the head and ajna have been defined for all of us based on the transit. So it's actually a good time to be doing podcasting and things like that, because you'll feel like you can express and explain yourself in more concrete detail, because the head and ajna are all about inspiration, thoughts, and getting your thoughts out and formulating ideas and concepts. And so as a reflector, you're going to feel a little bit differently each and every day as that moon is transiting different things and activating different parts of your chart. Maybe one day you'll have a defined sacral center and you'll feel like a generator. Maybe one day you'll feel like a manifesting generator. Who knows? You'll have the throat and you'll have the sacral. Maybe one day you'll feel really emotional because you'll have the solar plexus defined. And so for a reflector, this is where you kind of can look more so at the gates. So if you've looked up your chart, you'll notice that there are black and red lines coming from each center. So most people have at least gates defined, even if they're a reflector. Most people aren't 100% open, nothing at all. It's possible, but I've never seen it. And so basically, those are like little, they're going to tell you how the energy is expressed in that specific center. So it's still going to show you that you consistently process energy in that center in a very specific way. And so everybody has definition of some sort. And so if you have gates in a center as a reflector, that means that you'll more likely have that center defined when the moon is transiting, because you basically, when two gates connect, that's what we call a channel, and that's what makes a defined center. So for example, Kallie, looking at your chart, you have a lot of gates or lines coming off your root center. So I wouldn't doubt it if when things are transiting around the solar plexus, the sacral, and the spleen, that you would have definition there, because you have so many lines potentially activating that. So if the other half of that channel is activated through that gate, then the center will be defined and it'll actually make for two defined centers. And so that's what's interesting about being a reflector is they say, the not self of a reflector is disappointment, or the higher expression is surprise, because you're surprised at who you are that day. You're so enveloped in the mystery of it. And, because you can feel the health or, the dysfunction of things around you, that you may become disappointed with the way things are. And you're like, why is everything so messed up in this world? What's going on? Like, I can literally feel it. Like, your energy is just, ugh. So they can become disappointed, or really, I like to say, they can kind of become disenchanted with life, because they miss the magic, because they're so stuck in the, why is it like this? Why can't it be like this? And so that's a big thing, because the other thing about the reflectors, they have the greatest potential to really be so connected to the universe and to nature, because they are such cyclical beings. How you feel is based on the lunar cycle, but also, you're more impacted by the seasons. You're more impacted by the geopathic stress, or the telluric currents. So basically, there's currents under the earth that have an impact on how we feel. That's why some places in the world are called vortexes, or energy vortexes, because the current there is really strong. So you can be connected to all of that source energy, and be very emptied out and be just fully connected and in flow. And so that's what's so beautiful about it, is that the more connected to nature and its cycles you are, the more connected you'll be to your own internal cycles.
Mm, that's so spot on too, with the, as you said, the transits and being really sensitive to that, because a lot of
Mhm.
times before I even will look at something that's going on astrologically, I will feel something. Like,
Mhm.
just one example is a few weeks ago, I was really feeling like embodying, just not just like knowing about something, but really embodying it. It was this weird, like the word embody just kept coming up for me. And then I watched a video about what transits we are in human design, and it was the gate of embodiment. And I was
Wow,
like, this is exactly
that's amazing.
what knowing about my human design has helped me with, is like tapping more into that internal knowledge that was already there and that I already felt, but I didn't know about.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about it, no matter what your type is, what your human design is showing you is a snapshot of the cosmos at the time of your birth. And there's also a design time, which has an impact on you too. So it's like two snapshots of the cosmos put together. And so you're a walking embodiment of that energy. And then when there's transits and wherever you're open in your chart, then you'll feel that energy. And it's all just trying to teach us lessons on this path of life. And it's all trying to get us to grow and get us to evolve and shift into a higher version of ourselves than we were before, than we were yesterday. And so it's all for our evolution. And so, yeah, we really are an embodiment of pure cosmic magic. And I think the more that we understand that and step into that, we'll see how special even dark times are in our personal lives or in the collective.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
that,
And
and that
so,
resonates with me. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to touch on, when I say way to lunar cycle, again, that's related to decision making. And so it's the big decisions in life that's referring to, not like what to eat for breakfast. It's just
Wait
like
28 days.
fast. um, yeah, it's basically saying that you're going to feel differently about a situation throughout the course of a month, or your case, throughout your period cycle, even like your menstrual cycle. It corresponds perfectly with that. You'll feel differently about something, and so if it's something that is a really big commitment or very life altering, you just want to wait as long as you can to see how your opinion or how you feel about it, if that changes, or if you just get more excited about it. It depends. And that can even go with dating. I hate to say it. It's because you may feel that person differently on the first date versus the fifth date. And, before committing to them, you really want to see how you feel around them at all different activations of your chart, and if you're really compatible energetically in that way.
It's really funny that you say that, because I actually joked with the guy that I'm dating about how I need.
Oh, Kallie, you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay. Well, hopefully it keeps going on here. But
It's like a robotic microphone sound.
dang. All right. Well, everything's clear on my end, so maybe it will clear up. But that's just funny that you said that. Hopefully it's going through here. But it's funny that you say that, because I actually said that to the guy that I'm dating, because I said I need a few lunar cycles because if I really do feel completely differently throughout the month, and so now instead of rushing into decisions, which I know that I used to do, because in our society and culture, we don't really give people time to make decisions. We say we want this job, have a week to decide. We as a society don't really give a lot of times a full lunar cycle to make a lot of those decisions. But when I'm able to, like you said, with those big decisions, I now know, okay, don't rush into this, because I will feel different in a couple of weeks, I'll feel differently in a month. So by allowing myself that time, I have been able to make a lot clearer decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so beautiful how you put that, because there is so much pressure, and it's your life to live, and it's going to impact you the most, right? So you want to feel completely like you have the gift of time to really make an informed choice that feels good to you, and that there really is no rush. Because I think a lot of times what we forget when we're waiting for the invitation, when we're waiting to respond, or waiting a lunar cycle, is that divine timing always plays a role. And there's certain things, like, here's a great example. I've been thinking about doing podcasting for like a couple of years now, and I kept putting it off. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know. Something just doesn't feel right about it. And even I fall into the trap of mistaking it for laziness, or that fear is getting in the way, or what have you. But my body always said, no, just wait. And I'm always like, why? Why do I have to wait? But I'm always so happy when I do wait and when I do listen to that, because pieces tend to fall into place that weren't in place before for me to have a successful go at that, if that makes sense. Like, divine timing always plays a role. And that's why human design is telling you that that's your strategy. It's for a reason, because it'll ensure that the universe is backing that, and that things are in alignment. And so, because your body, like you said, can feel the transits. There are certain transits that we can be under where it's more likely that your business will fail if you start your business on that day. Or say you don't know what Mercury retrograde is, but you get married under a retrograde, it can increase the likelihood of divorce. All of these things that we aren't aware of, and that we don't need to be aware of, and we don't need to dissect it, and get like perfectionistic about it at all. But I'm just trying to illustrate there may be a good reason why we don't feel that that's the right time to do something, because there may not be as much flow around it as there could be. It may not be the best time. And so that's what I want to say, is that there really is the best time for everything. And that's really sometimes what your body is responding to. It may not necessarily be a no forever. It could just be a not right now.
So yeah, it's like with you podcast, it would be universe saying, not ready yet, but your message is coming, and now we're here, and all in divine timing.
Absolutely, exactly. And yeah, because I was thinking about it again, which was a synchronicity when you reached out and you're like, hey, do you want to collaborate in this podcast? And I was like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about doing that. And so that's actually a perfect illustration of me waiting to respond. Like, you reached out to me and I was like, yes, like this is something I've been thinking about. So it's all, if something is meant for you, the universe will send it your way. And even if you don't catch on the first time, it'll keep knocking at your door, because if something is meant for you, it's meant for you. And they'll keep coming back around and around and around until you get the hint. Your purpose will kind of, keep knocking on your door again and again until you answer the call, because it's that important.
It's like the universe is conspiring always in my favor. It's just a matter of us allowing rather than blocking that.
Absolutely. And so I don't know if you wanted me to get into a little bit more of your chart, Callie.
Yeah, let's just give them a little teaser, like a sneak.
Yeah, so I can kind of illustrate some of the things in the chart that I didn't touch on through your chart.
Okay.
And because if you go on my body graph, you're going to want to look to the right hand side, and it'll say all your chart properties. So like I've already gone over, it'll say what your type is, what your strategy is, what your not self theme is. And then it'll say, what's your signature? Well, that's exactly what I was saying, the higher expression of the not self. So for Callie, the not self would be disappointment. And then the signature would be surprise, which is the higher expression of that. And then it tells you about, what your definition is, which Callie's is none, because again, she doesn't have anything defined. It's all white and open in her chart. And then it says her authority is lunar cycle, which is what we were just talking about. And then we get to profile, which I think might be my favorite thing in human design, honestly, because for me, outside of waiting to respond and relaxing into that, as soon as I found out my profile, I was like, wow, like that is me to a T. And I didn't realize that, because yeah, profile, it kind of tells you the archetypes that you're meant to embody in this lifetime. It tells you more specifically to you, what your purpose is, how you're meant to interact with people around you, what's going to make you happiest, like where your energy is best placed. And yeah, it's more specific to you, which is why I'm saying you can be so different, even if you're the same type, because profile really changes the entire game when it comes to your chart. And so you're going to see that there are two numbers to a profile. And so Callie's is a 6-2, and that's called the role model hermit profile. And you have such a fun profile. So first of all, you have the bigger number first. So that means that it's going to be a more interpersonal chart in general. So you're going to have the people in your life are going to play a more significant role in your healing process than if somebody has a smaller number first. It's a more it's a more personal internal process. And so as a 6-2, right off the bat, it tells me that, like it says, you're embodying the role model archetype first and foremost. And that's going to be the part of you that you more consciously embody. And then the hermit is something that you kind of grow into over time, because all aspects of our chart, there's going to be parts of it where you're like, oh my God, that's totally me. That's going to be the conscious element of your chart. And then the unconscious element is something that you grow into over time. I think you actually grow into your whole chart over time, but more specifically, the unconscious aspects, you're like, that's not me. What are you talking about? Or it's something that you took for granted, as everybody has that, but truly it's actually is unique to you. And it's something that kind of has to be more pointed out to you for you to understand and fully embody.
Yeah.
So in
sorry, just like something
yeah,
that comes to mind. I think of that is like my sister and I have that 6-9 profile both, but hers is a 4-6 and mine is a 6-2. And so you can see the difference in the way that plays out. Because for her, like she didn't even really think of herself as like that model archetype. I don't feel like as much as that 4 profile line. But like for me, I was always viewed kind of as like the leader on my local team and like that versus and I always knew that two little that hermit aspect that was there, but just not really, like aware of it or just again like it brings more clarity to the I need alone time to rejuvenate my energy. And that's that little hermit line that I thought that everybody needed. Like it's that unconscious, like I think everybody just needed some alone time to rejuvenate. But my sister, with her 6 being that second line, she has to have interaction. She has to have a lot of community and around people to get her energy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's so interesting, because my dominant line is the hermit. And then my unconscious line is the 4, the opportunist. So, and I see that play out so much more as I grow into my design, because I always saw myself as the hermit, but not as the like social butterfly of the 4 that thrives on connection and networking. But now I'm like, well, duh, I need the balance of both. And so that's what's great about profile is the two poles balance each other out, because if you just had the 6 or just had the 2, you'd kind of be imbalanced. You'd either be alone all the time in your room or you would be out there, and never have any alone time. And so, yeah, the interesting thing about your profile is, like you said, it's very leadership oriented, and it goes through 3 distinctive phases. So it kind of breaks it up into the first 30 years is really going to be you operating more as a 3 line, which when you have a 3 in your profile, it's all about trial and error and learning through direct experience. So you're going out there, you can't just read about it in a book. That's great. That's more of a 1 or a 2 profile to do that. But you have to actually go out there and experience something to know whether or not it's for you. And that's how you learn the most about life, is kind of going through the school of hard knocks. You learn about something through direct experience, and then you integrate those lessons. And the lessons that you're going to integrate in the first 30 years is going to ultimately make you that role model, because you have so much lived experience and wisdom to then share with others later in life. And it's going to be such an important thing that you can offer people, because again, you didn't just read it in a book, you lived it, you experienced it. And there's going to be no person better to ask about that specific lesson than somebody who's been through it and knows the pitfalls, knows maybe where you can go wrong and how you can have an easier time doing it if you had hindsight. So you can be an amazing mentor, amazing teacher, amazing leader for your community. And then, so once you go through your Saturn return at 30, you kind of slowly inch away from not really knowing what you want to do and being in that experiential mode to having a better idea of your purpose, a better idea of what's meant for you. And then you're going to spend roughly ages 30 to 50 until your Chiron return, refining it, integrating the lessons you've learned to really, really prepare to step into that full role model archetype in later life, so 50 and on. And you'll be a teacher and a leader throughout your entire life, but that's when you're going to fully step into it. Is, the wise sage is how I think about it. And I think that the hermit goes so well with this profile, because you have to have alone time to integrate all of that lived experience, and I think the 2 can show up more so when it's in the unconscious part of the profile, when you kind of feel like you're getting irritable with people, like people are kind of getting on your nerves. That's a sign that you need some alone time. And I know that better than anybody. If I'm in my office and somebody opens the door, I'm like, what are you doing? And it's not to be rude at all. It's because the hermit archetype, once it's in its zone, you're in the zone and you don't want to be interrupted. You don't want your flow to be broken. And because it's your time where you're really like fully, say researching human design or doing what you love to do, and you just don't want that process to be interrupted, because that's how you recharge. And so that's so important. So you're going to be spending that time integrating all of those wonderful lessons, recharging so that you can go back out and be that leader. And so the other thing to know about the hermit profile is that you want to pay attention to what comes naturally to you. because you, more than any other profile type, are going to have natural innate gifts that don't come from some sort of certification or schooling. They're just things that you're naturally inclined toward and you're born with. And you want to go more towards those gifts rather than things that don't come easily. And because it's just a sign of like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. That comes naturally. I gravitate towards that. Go with that and don't second guess it, because it's that way for a reason and life will be so much easier. The other thing, what else do I want to say about this profile? So basically, yeah, it's just time for integration, and you go out there and then you have an impact on your community. So I think it's a beautiful balance of both things. And then the last part that you'll see in the chart properties is what's called an incarnation cross. And I think there can be misconceptions around this, that it's like it will tell you exactly what you're supposed to do in life. But really, what it's saying is that here are the 4 gates in the chart that have the biggest impact on your overall body graph. So these are the energies that you really need to integrate. So, how I'll look at it is I'll say, okay, what are the 4 gates? And I'll kind of look them up individually and break them down and then synthesize them and put them all back together. And so that when I see what gates, what center they belong to, it tells me that that person should pay special attention to those centers, because it's going to be energy that comes up for them again and again to be integrated. It's kind of like the universe is saying, hey, there's so many things that you could focus on in this life, endless lessons to learn. But how about you learn this lesson? You learn it really, really well. So that's kind of how I like to see it. And just to illustrate it kind of in real life, your gates are, we'll start with the sun. So 2 gates are going to be in the sun, and the 2 gates in the sun are like roughly 70% of the energy in a chart when it comes to gates. So they're really, really important. Again, think kind of like sun sign. It has a big impact on your design. And so there's always going to be a gate that's unconscious and a gate that's conscious. Part of your incarnation cross that you're very aware of, and like, yep, that's me. And the other part that's like, I might have to think about that and grow into that part of myself. And so basically, the first gate that you have is gate 45, which is called the gate of the gatherer. And that's going to be your unconscious sun. So you'll have to let me know how aware of this you are, Callie, already, and how much you've seen this in your personal life. Like I said, you grow into it throughout your life. And so you may have experiences a little bit, especially since you're coming up to your Saturn return. And they say that you really, really start to embody your design after 30. So the gate of the gatherer is in the throat center, which already tells me that, okay, the throat is going to be a big theme in your life. That's something that you need to master, is the energy of the throat. This gate's ruled by Gemini, which in astrology, again, rules the throat. It's all about communication. It's about connecting with community, and it's a desire to kind of fit in with community. And so the gate of the gatherer is, the beautiful thing about human design is you'll find that themes repeat themselves. And this is basically another way to describe your role model archetype. So basically, it means that you have the ability to be completely cognizant and aligned with the needs of your community. You know how to bring people together to create really strong bonds. So you know how to bring people together in a way that's deep and meaningful, where everybody in the room feels connected to every other person in the room. No one leaves feeling like a stranger. And so you have this consistent ability to provide education specifically for the well-being of the tribe. So you have a really good way of articulating information that's going to enhance the well-being of all of whoever chooses to be in your space or listen to your podcast or whatever they're doing in your vicinity. And it also is part of the channel of money. So it also has to do with resources. So actually you really know how to delegate and make the best use of money and resources, and you know how to use them in the most efficient way and kind of maximize that. So sometimes they call it like the gate of the queen too, because it's like that energy of like, that should go there and that should go there and you should do that. You'd be really good at that. And you just, again, you see it's a very projectory type of energy, because again, you see what each person's role could be and you see how they could be the best version of themselves. And so you want to help them get there and educate them on that. And so that's why they call it the gate of the gatherer, because you gather people together and you teach them how to grow in whatever area that you're teaching them about in that moment. So that being your unconscious sun, that means that that's going to be a huge part of your life throughout life. And it's going to be something that you only get better at over time, and you're only going to keep growing into that energy more and more and more. So the throat, huge one.
That makes perfect sense for me, who thought that I was going to be in a cubicle when I went into college, from transitioning from that to doing doTERRA, which really is all about gathering and all about team, community and
so
uplifting and leadership, to really educate. So that like makes total sense. And I was super uncomfortable with that at first. And as you said, I'm growing more into that.
Yeah.
So I feel that heavy.
Exactly. And, going back to the role model, because you're about to go through your Saturn return, once you exit the Saturn return, you'll be the 6. You'll be the role model. You won't be the 3 anymore. So it doesn't mean you're never going to experiment or anything, but you'll really start to feel like you'll have a big level up in that area, probably around the age 30. So look forward to that. And then the conscious aspect of your sun gate is the gate of diverse possibilities. And so here, this is all about the head center. And so, as with all of the gates that you'll find in the head center, there can be a feeling of pressure to figure it all out and to examine life. Like, basically, you see life as this Rubik's cube that you have to like look at in all different angles to get to the right possibility, to get to the completed cube where everything has been worked out. So it can make you feel really uncomfortable when there are big questions, like the big life questions that are unanswerable, because there are some things in life that are always going to be a mystery. They're just not answerable. And so the more that you relish in knowing that there are things that are unknowable, the more you can relax that pressure that's there to figure it all out. And it's, again, that energy of knowing that things work themselves out with divine timing. So that's going to be something that's a big theme for you. And when I was laughing before we recorded that we had kind of talked about this, is because we've talked before about Virgo energy, and this gate is ruled by Virgo. So you can kind of get the vibe.
That makes total sense. And yeah, 100%.
So it's kind of like that nitpicky, perfectionistic, I need to know the answer. Otherwise, I feel insecure and like I feel pressure, like, oh my gosh, I need to know this. I need to figure this out. And so the thing about it is that there's a really beautiful expression of this gate, though, is because it makes you drawn to pouring all of yourself into the mysteries of life. Like, if you're really curious about something, it can just take you for the ride of a lifetime. It's kind of like that Aquarius energy. It's like, I want to know the meaning of life, and I want to dive into philosophy, and I want to, go into space and learn about that. And I want to, learn about human design. And I just want to know what it means to be human. And I want to know what value and significance that information can have in my life to better my life. And so there's a natural curiosity and love of mystery that you're always going to have, that's going to be a dominant part of your design. All for a reason.
Spot on. Spot on.
I know, isn't it crazy? It blows me away, even though I've been doing this a while.
It never ceases to amaze me. Never.
It's like pictured as like being like floating on your back in a sea of uncertainty, instead of trying to like dog paddle and, try to figure it all out. It's just like, okay, I can just know that life is mysterious and some things are unknowable. And I'm just going to have so much fun trying to figure it out and not put pressure on myself to actually have the perfect answer.
Mm,
So more childlike with it, playful. So then we go to the other two gates that are in the incarnation cross, which are in the earth sign. So now you're kind of seeing, hopefully, where astrology plays a role, because each one of your gates is in an astrological sign. And then each gate, to complicate it further, is then ruled by a different astrological sign. So there's the planet and then the sign. And so the earth really serves to be a grounding force and a grounding energy. Again, it kind of balances you out. So the gate that you have in the unconscious is gate 26. So that's all about, it says the taming power of the great. So it's located in the heart center, which again, so that's going to be a theme, is the heart center. And so this is ruled by Capricorn. So it's very, very Capricorn of, it's part of the channel of enterprise. So it makes her a really good entrepreneur. So basically, you have this amazing, consistent willpower that you can harness that really commits to the bigger picture, or a vision that you can hold in your mind's eye of like, this is the goal I want to accomplish. And like the Capricorn is like a mountain goat that slowly climbs up the mountain and takes all the necessary steps to reach that goal. That's going to again be dominant in you, that you have that very Capricorn, like, I'm going to see this through, and you can commit to it and you can really see it through. And then it results in like amazing, amazing accomplishments and substantial material rewards. It is, the heart center is, you'll feel it. It's like, is your heart in something or not? Your heart has to be fully in something to actually see it through. A lot of times people think they're quitters or they don't have willpower, but it's really just because their heart wasn't in it in the first place. So they sabotage it. And so when you're fully in alignment with something, you will see it through no matter what.
That literally just made my eyes started watering. Like, when something resonates so much, like you get the chills and your eyes start watering. That
Yes.
that's something again that I take for granted. The fact that I can tap into that because I have this bigger vision, even though the day to day like work is hard. It's
Mhm.
like I can always tap into my why, like that bigger vision, to tap into that willpower and remember, like, I want that community to be healthier. I desire
Yeah.
this, and like coming back to like my intention. So that's so spot on.
Yeah, because not everybody has the willpower to see that through. It's not easy, not easy at all. And so that's why it's like, when you see your chart and you see your potential is like, wow, this isn't just even a gate I have defined. This is like a dominant, like very strong energy in my body at all times that I can harness in times where I'm feeling discouraged. I can look back at that and be like, no, I got this. I got that Capricorn goat energy. It's like, I can see this through. I just have to take the next right step and trust that, if I'm on this step and maybe sometimes I lose my vision and I can't see the road ahead, trusting that the next step will present itself in divine timing and you'll know what to do. And so the other aspect of this gate is that it ties in beautifully with the gate of the gatherer, because it says that when your creation is benefiting the collective, it'll come back to you tenfold. So you'll see like tenfold success in something that's going to benefit humanity, and in your personal community, than it would be if you're just like, your heart's not in it and it's just like something to make ends meet, something purely for the financial aspect. If it has deeper meaning for the collective, the universe is going to be like, reward her now. Send resources and people her way to help her, because this is something that is needed on the planet. So you're backed.
I love that.
So then we get to the last gate of your incarnation cross, which is gate 63, which, this is what I love about incarnation crosses. There's nothing that is accidental because your gates all feed into each other so beautifully. because this is gate 63, which is also in the head center. So we got a lot of head center energy. And so this is what's called the gate of doubt. So whereas, like I said before, gate 64, that's also in the head center in your incarnation cross, the gate 64 wants to know all the answers. It wants to figure it all out. It wants the how and the why. And then gate 63 comes in and says it wants to be certain about everything before moving forward, to avoid making mistakes or to avoid appearing uncertain to others. And so, unfortunately, for you, Kallie, the conscious gates are the ones that are all about doubt and uncertainty. And then the unconscious elements are all about how amazing and powerful you are. So that means that you're gonna have to remind yourself when you get stuck in that like mental loop of like, who am I to say this? I don't have the right answers. I don't know this well enough to tell people about it, to share with my community. You have to kick in and say, you know what? Yes, I do. I'm a channel of divine source information, and I have intuitive gifts that I was born with, hence the 2 profile, which we talked about, that are just innate within me that won't ever come from a book. I do have the answers, and I'm going to trust myself to say the right thing. And so that's all what it is. And so it's just like, again, it's like something that you can literally like write down and put it somewhere you see it, where it's like when doubt starts to trip you up, when you start to feel uncertain, when you start to be too self-critical, then you know, okay, those gates are kicking in, and then you can just let it go. You can kind of laugh at it. Like, I think the best way to transmute negative energy or heavy energy is to have a sense of humor about it. It's not to like get down on yourself and be like, oh my God, here I go again. Like, I'm doubting myself. It's to be like, oh my gosh, like that's hilarious, you know? It's like to make light of it and to say, here we go again, like it's that gate. And then, you know, to laugh it off and to make light of it transmutes it and makes it lighter. And so it can dissipate out of the body. And you just smile through it and you're like, you know what? I give myself full permission to feel this doubt, and then I'm going to let it go. And that's all you have to do, because the great thing about energy is that it can be commanded. You can command it out of the body. If you say, okay, you picked up on somebody's energy that you were around, you can say, okay, return to sender with consciousness attached. That's always what I like to say, because it doesn't belong to you. The doubts don't belong to you. They're not who you are at the core. So you return to sender and you say, I don't need that. I acknowledge it, but it's not who I am. And so you command it out, and then the energy has no choice but to leave. And so that's what's cool about it, is it's really that simple. It's as simple as being commanding over it and being in your power with it, and not letting it, not mistaking it for who you are.
That is so, so powerful and yummy as far as everything that I needed to hear in this
Oh,
moment as
yay.
well. Perfect, because
Always for a reason.
it is, it's always in divine timing, as we
Yeah.
talked about too.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's like that last gate is ruled by Pisces. So it's more about being in the flow and being in the wonder, instead of that, like Virgo is always opposite Pisces. So it's like Virgo clings on and Pisces has to let go. And so it's like, okay, let me let go and flow and know that, you know, I got this and I don't have to doubt myself. And so that's why I love knowing, especially somebody like you too, who's familiar with astrology. It's like, it really makes the gate come to life, and you're like, okay, I know exactly that energy. Virgo, I got it. Capricorn, yeah, absolutely. You know, it's like, so that's why I think if anybody at home like listening is finding themselves stuck in human design and confused, I know the gates in particular can be a place where people get tripped up. I really recommend Chetan Parkin's book, The Book of Lines, because that's what's going to tell you the astrological ruler. And if you type into Google Pisces or Gemini, I find it, there's so much more information on that energy, and you can get a real sense of it that way. Sometimes you have to, I find myself going back to astrology because there's so much more written on astrology, so you can get more information. And there's also the Tao Oracle, which has all 64 gates. And that's a really great way to interface with the gates too and pull a card and see what energy is coming up for you. So that's kind of how I learned it. I get asked that a lot about gates in particular, so I want to make sure I mention that. And just really have fun with it. It's a journey that never ends, and you're always discovering something new. And whatever part jumps out at you in your chart, trust that and go look it up, because that's the message that you're meant to receive.
I love that. Perfect way to end this podcast. And I appreciate your knowledge. And I know that we will probably have another conversation around this at some point because this topic can go so much deeper too. So if you've made it this far and you are deep into human design, don't forget that there is a Kallie 15% off sale that Cailee is going to give any of our listeners. So be sure to dive deeper into your own human design if that is something that you're interested in, because as you could tell just from the small glimpse that we got of the information that I received, I feel so much freer and lighter having that knowledge. So thank you, Cailee.
Yeah, of course. It was such a pleasure, honestly. I had so much fun.
Me too. This was amazing. So bless you all and thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.